Agatha and the prince's wedding had become one of the most anticipated events of the season. The preparations were long and meticulous. Everything had to be perfect. Magnificent dresses, luxurious floral arrangements, sparkling chandeliers adorning every room of the grand hall, and the grand wedding feast promised to be an event worthy of royalty. The estate where the ceremony took place was adorned with flowers. Every corner was decorated with exquisite compositions, and the sound of a piano filled the air, creating an atmosphere of lightness and grace. The guests were members of the aristocracy, but among them were many of Agatha's. Agatha and the prince's wedding had become one of the most anticipated events of the season. The preparations were long and meticulous. Everything had to be perfect. Magnificent dresses, luxurious floral arrangements, sparkling chandeliers adorning every room of the grand hall, and the grand wedding feast promised to be an event worthy of royalty. The estate where the ceremony took place was adorned with flowers. Every corner was decorated with exquisite compositions, and the sound of a piano filled the air, creating an atmosphere of lightness and grace. The guests were members of the aristocracy, but among them were many of Agatha's close and dear friends, those who had supported her since childhood and helped her along this journey. Colin, Penelope, Philip, and Eloise took honored seats in the front row. Penelope, with a tender smile watching the wedding, realized that this was not just a happy day for Agatha. This moment was also a release from the promises that she and Philip had made to each other many years ago. Now they were free. The ceremony was magical. Agatha looked incredible. In a snow-white dress, with an elegant crown sparkling on her head, she walked down the rose-adorned aisle arm in arm with Colin, who on this day was not just her stepfather, but the man who supported her and helped her take this important step. When the formal part concluded and the couple exchanged vows, the guests moved to the banquet hall, where the celebration began. The feast was lavish, filled with laughter and conversations. And then Agatha, now a princess, stood up to give her speech. Everyone fell silent when she stepped into the center of the hall. Her gaze was full of gratitude, and her voice was firm yet emotional. "I want to thank everyone who is here today," she began, looking at the guests. "This is not just my wedding. It is the day when all my dreams came true, thanks to the people I love." She paused and looked at her godmother, Penelope, sitting next to Colin, holding his hand. "First and foremost, I want to thank my godmother," Agatha began, her voice trembling with emotion. "You became my mother when I lost mine. At that moment, when the world seemed scary and lonely to me, you were there, supporting and embracing me, even when you yourself were going through hard times. You didn't just take on this role. You made it your own with such love and care that I never felt deprived of warmth. You helped me grow to become who I am today, and I will never be able to express enough gratitude for always being there. Thanks to you, I found the strength to move forward, no matter what." Penelope smiled, her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of happiness. Agatha then turned to Colin and continued, "Colin, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart," Agatha began, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for allowing Penelope to be my mother. You gave me the opportunity to feel like part of this family and never put barriers between us. You understood how important it was for me to have someone who could be my mother. You gave me this love, and for that, I will be grateful to you for life. And thank you for always coming back. You've always been a father to me, and although Elliot might not understand it yet, he's incredibly lucky to be your son." Colin nodded, trying to contain the emotions overwhelming his heart. Agatha then turned to Philip. "I was lucky enough to have two fathers," Agatha began, her voice soft but full of deep gratitude. "You never tried to replace anyone or impose yourself. You were just there, quietly and gently, and that was exactly what I needed. I know that if your brother were here, he would say the same. He would thank you for becoming not just a guardian, but a true father to me. I'm sure if he could see how you supported me all these years, he would be proud of how you took care of us. I've often thought that he is surely grateful to you, just as I am, for your kindness, your patience, and for always being there. You weren't just an uncle to me. You gave me a second family and the love I will always cherish." Philip, looking at Agatha, held back tears, understanding that these words came not only from her, but from his brother as well, whose memory lived on in each of their hearts. Finally, Agatha raised her glass and smiled at Eloise, whose engagement ring sparkled in the candlelight. "Mrs. Crane, thank you for agreeing to make him happy. I hope that little Penelope and Elliot will grow to share the same strong friendship as their parents." Eloise, laughing through tears, raised her glass in response, her gaze meeting Philip's as they exchanged warm smiles. The guests applauded, raising their glasses, and Agatha concluded her speech by looking lovingly and gratefully at the prince, who stood beside her. "I'm so happy to have found my love. This day isn't the end, but the beginning of our story together. And I'm glad that all of you are part of this story. The hall once again filled with applause, and the guests continued the celebration. For Agatha, Colin, Penelope, Philip, and Eloise, this day wasn't just a joyful event, but a moment when the past finally let go of them, and they all could begin a new chapter in their lives free and happy. Thus, this story ended with love, laughter, and gratitude, surrounded by family warmth and friendship. She raised her glass and, without saying another word, looked at her brother. Their eyes met, and she just winked at him with a warm smile. Oliver, standing a little behind, also smiled in return, his heart full of pride and love for his sister. Next to him stood Florence, Cressida's daughter. She smiled shyly, watching the events unfold. When her gaze accidentally met Oliver's, standing nearby, she blushed slightly and lowered her eyes. Oliver, noticing her embarrassment, blushed a little himself and briefly looked down. He smiled back, but his usual focus and seriousness couldn't hide a hint of nervousness. Agatha didn't miss Oliver's glance. She followed it and noticed her daughter standing near Oliver. A question flickered in her eyes. She looked questioningly at Eloise, who stood a little off to the side. But Eloise, noticing this exchange of glances, just smiled and shrugged, as if to say, "Well, sometimes love comes unexpectedly." Cressida narrowed her eyes slightly, but then couldn't help but smile, realizing that a new chapter was about to begin. Acknowledgements to the readers. Phew. This has been a long journey, full of emotions, twists, and touching moments. And now that we've reached the end, I want to raise a glass to you, my dear readers. To each of you who walked alongside me, step by step, supporting me throughout this journey with your comments, likes, and simply your presence. You gave me the motivation to keep writing and sharing this story. Thank you for your patience, support, and for making this journey so special. Without you, this story wouldn't have been the same. And though this is the end of this chapter, there are many more adventures ahead. See you in the next story.